highlight of your life is daddyhood.
For those of you who cannot wait and love daddyhood, please head over to our Patreon. We have exclusive access to episodes, we have early access to episodes, and we have behind the scenes footage. Head on over there, sign up, be part of the exclusive daddyhood group, and join us over there. Welcome to Daddyhood. We are in New York. I am joined by the lovely Griffin Matthews. Thanks to our partners at PeerSpace, we are in New York City filming this, and they made it possible. So thank you to PeerSpace. Back to Daddyhood, back to Griffin Matthews. Let's get into it.
We better talk about all of the things.
Well, before we talk about all of the things, we have to acknowledge that you are a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University.
Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie.
Okay. I know. Matt Bomer went there, in case you're wondering.
Love Matt Bomer.
Well,
White Collar.
What's not to love about Matt Bomer?
All of his recent work, too. Yeah. He's easy on the eyes, too. And School of Drama in his hometown of Pittsburgh, PA, known for his role on Golden Globe Emmy-nominated series, one of my favorite shows, The Flight Attendant, starring alongside Haley Kiyoko? Kaylee.
That's your other Haley.
My other friend, Haley Kiyoko.
And now we've got Kaylee Cuoco. It's just
Kaylee
a lot
Cuoco.
of Okos.
I knew how to say her name too, sorry. He joined the Marvel Universe as Luke Jacobson, costume designer for the superheroes on She-Hulk, and is now starring in the fourth season of Genius MLK/X as a gay civil rights leader. Rustin. I mean, it's timely too because of the movie and film coming out as well.
Yeah.
As a writer, Griffin co-wrote, starred, and directed in Witness Uganda, a documentary musical about his journey as is it AIDS worker in Uganda?
An aid worker, yeah.
An aid worker in Uganda. And the award-winning show played at Harvard Off-Broadway and at the Wallace, did I say that?
Annenberg Theater.
Annenberg Theater.
It's in Beverly Hills.
Bougie.
It's very, very bougie over
I love
there.
it. But his greatest artistic achievement is being Daddy Griff to his sons, Galileo and Apollo.
That's me.
Beautiful names.
Thank you.
Welcome to Daddyhood.
I'm a dad, so I belong here.
Well, before we get into questions, I'm on my way to becoming a dad soon.
Yeah.
So I have to
work
on my dad jokes.
Okay, that no one said anything about the buzzer.
Brace yourself.
Oh, God. Okay.
Griffin.
Yes.
Why don't ghosts like the rain?
It's so early in New York City.
It dampens their spirit.
Great. That's a dad joke.
I need to put it all together.
That was a dad
Why
joke.
don't ghosts like the rain? Because it dampens their spirits. Okay.
You're prepared to be a dad.
Dad joke did what it did.
It did what it did.
It did what it did. We have so much to get into because our experiences, I'm sure, are much different. And my path to parenthood is much different than your path to parenthood, as it is for everyone out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how you became a father.
Well, interestingly enough, I was working in Uganda. I went to Uganda when I was 23 years old, and just like on a summer trip.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks. I ended up meeting a group of teenagers who were out of school. Their parents had died, and I started a nonprofit for them. And then 20 years later, here I am. So I kind of felt like I was a dad to them. They call me dad, Tata. And so I think it kind of prepared me to become a father here in LA and go through the foster care system. People always asked me, why don't you adopt one of the Ugandans? And there was, of course I had that thought, but it's very difficult for gay people. Uganda is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be gay. So that wasn't happening. And I also realized that that's Uganda. That is there. The point of our nonprofit Uganda project was to raise the next generation of Ugandans to solve Uganda. Americans cannot solve Uganda. Ugandans can solve Uganda. And so for us, when we started looking at having a baby, it was about what's our solve here. Like we have Uganda right here.
Yeah.
So there are 40,000 kids in the LA foster care system, and it felt like our turn. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting, the people who are like, why don't you just adopt? It's so easy. And
it's so expensive.
And complicated.
It's expensive and it's complicated, and it's, there is no guarantee.
Right.
My therapist used to say, like, part of the journey of having a baby. Certainly if you're gay and you can't make one on your own, that is your pregnancy. That's the pregnancy for us. Whatever you choose, that is the pregnancy. And so it's going to be complicated. Adoption, foster care, surrogacy, whatever. It's all complicated. And that is our pregnancy.
So you make the decision to go through the foster care system in Los Angeles, which, you know, there are unfortunately kids aging out of that foster care system every single day.
Yeah.
So good on you. What was that process like? Well, how do you start?
Well, first of all, it took us a couple different tries. We started the foster care system here in New York. We were living in New York. And then it wasn't going to work for us because there were too many parameters that just made no sense for two artists. We went back to LA, started the process again, stopped it. Again, it was like too many. There was too much going on in our lives. And then we went for a third round. And what they had done in the third round was you only had to do 3 weekends, 8-hour sessions. Before it was like 3 months of classes. They condensed it into 3 weekends of just 8 hours. And that became a much easier path. I will say on the second weekend after we were now 16 hours deep, we were like, we're not going to do this. It's terrifying. They tell you everything about all the things that could go wrong. And we were like, this is not for us. We don't want to do it. And then the third weekend we went back for our final, just because we were like, okay, we've already done 16 hours. It's time. Yeah. And they brought in all of these foster families who had gotten through the process, and they brought in all of the kids. And of course, they scare the hell out of you because a lot of the kids come from insane situations, drugs and homelessness and all of it. Like anything you can imagine, the kids are coming from. But then they came in the room and they were stunning and normal looking, acting children. It was gorgeous. And that's when we were like, oh, maybe we're fine. And maybe this is the right path for us.
Do you think they do that to try to weed people out as far as...
Yes.
Got it.
And you should.
Yeah.
Everyone in our class did not get through it. Everyone in our class should not have gotten through it.
Oh, the tea.
Well, you get some cuckoo bananas, you know? But it is a weeding out process, and they try to do that because obviously the kids are coming out of really difficult situations. They don't want to put them into another one.
Right.
So they need sane, healthy humans to provide safe spaces for the kids. So anyways, we got approved on a Friday at 3:00. I will never forget this. They called us and said, you got approved, congratulations. It'll be a couple of weeks before we find you a match coordinator and get you a baby. I left the loft, went to the arts district to have a happy hour alone. And then my phone rang and it was 5:00 on Friday. And they said, we have a baby, yes or no?
Same day?
Same day. Yes or no, like that. You have to make a decision because they were like, it's the weekend and we need to know if you can take this baby. Well, we said, first of all, can we have 5 minutes to discuss? Matt called me back and we talked and we were like, let's not play God. This is it. So we said yes. And that yes was Galileo.
I love that you just said that because I've said that to Jordan multiple times. I said, let's not play God.
Let's not play God.
Because there's so many decisions and choices that you have to make along this process, whether you go through the adoption or foster care and or surrogacy. You're faced with a decision every time you turn around. And you have to remind yourself, like, yes, we have this process, but like, I'm not here to play God. I'm not designing or creating a baby. No. That's not what this is intended for. It's to build my family.
I think if you ask the universe for something and the universe delivers, you better just keep going that direction.
I love that.
So, yeah.
So you say, was it Apollo first?
So first was Galileo.
Galileo
was 5 days old.
Okay.
And we picked him up on Monday. My best friend, Leslie Odom Jr.
5 days old.
Yes, he was 5 days old.
Wow.
My best friend, Leslie Odom Jr. and his wife, Nicolette, came over to the loft and like brought all baby supplies. They had just had a baby and they brought us a bunch of baby supplies. And we had nothing. We had no car seats. We had nothing. No changing table. So they put it all together and Monday morning we went and picked him up. And what I will say is his story is interesting because he was born in Glendale. He is half Armenian, half Black.
Okay.
And when we went to pick him up, we had, so other dad, Matt, lived in Mauritania, and we had this like African name ready for him.
Yeah.
It was Mamadou. And we went to go pick him up, and we thought they were going to like take us to like a nursery or something. And because in Glendale, if you're living in LA, Glendale's a pretty wealthy area. There is no like nursery room. All the parents once you have the baby, they just put the baby next to you and then you go home. And so we went to pick him up and he was behind the receptionist desk. They had him in a little bassinet behind it because they were like, we don't ever have this. Right. We've never had a baby here like this under these circumstances. So the nurses had been watching him for the 5 days.
Wow.
And he was sitting right here and they wheeled him out and he looked nothing like a Mamadou. And we were like, got it. And that moment was super emotional for us because we were terrified. The baby is this big, by the way. And the nurses were crying because they were like, he was ours for 5 days. And we thanked them and for taking care of him.
So you changed the name.
We changed it to,
where did Galileo come from?
Galileo. We were on a retreat. We had done a concert of Witness Uganda in the Bahamas. We were on this retreat and we were standing on an airstrip in the Bahamas at like midnight looking at the stars. And Matt was like, I love the name Galileo.
It's beautiful.
And I was like, that's a beautiful name. But then of course it was going to be Mamadou. And then we met him and we were like, nope, it's Galileo. No.
That's incredible. So I just know this from my own research of the foster care system. So the goal is always to reunite.
Yes.
Right. And they give you plenty of advance of like, when you're doing this, the end goal is to reunite the baby with its family. Do you know any of the history and what Galileo's backstory was? And also, did you have any ups and downs with the birth parents?
We had every up and down you can imagine on planet Earth. It was a brutal process, specifically with Galileo. One of the things that I tell people about the foster care system is mothers are vetted through the system. So if you have a first-time mother, they've got to put her through the entire system. His mother was very young. She had not been through the system. And so there was a long process to vet her through the system and all of her extended family through the system. And so we went through many, 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 many court cases, many, many, many appeals, lawyers.
She was trying to get custody.
She actually wasn't. It was a birth family member who was not qualified, who was trying.
Through all of this and hearing other people's stories, that's one of the more common ones. It's not even the birth parents. It's the extended family and or friends that are trying to fight the fight for somebody who isn't even qualified to be a parent.
Correct. And that was, she testified early on. She said, I want the baby to go to the gay couple. And there was a lawyer involved who was representing the birth family who believed that Armenian babies should be with Armenian families.
Wow.
And that is where I say race plays a factor, sexuality played a factor in that. For me, no one will ever say that. You know, like you can't talk about that in court, but you start to go, what does that mean? Because he's also half black.
And would they have said
the same? I happen to be half, you know, the black part. So it was, and also the foster families do not have a voice in court. So these were in the back of the courtroom while they're up there doing the thing. And it was brutal to have to listen to it and not be able to testify.
Do you think they would have said the same thing if it was a white person?
No.
Yeah.
It's not a white man and woman. No. I don't think that would have come up in the same way. It came up many times outside of court with the other birth family member who was fighting, who was very clear that he did not want his family member to be raised by a black person or a gay couple. It was made very, very, very clear.
And how, I mean, I could only imagine how that made you feel, but also just realizing that it was so openly discrimination and you couldn't call that for whatever reason. And also it's just it's a slippery slope because it's like, as soon as you call it for what it is, it becomes a bigger thing, but the systems are broken.
The system is deeply broken. And I say that because I think in the 70s, the system was geared towards the foster families. And then a couple of the foster families messed it up for everybody. And then the system flipped and is now geared toward the birth families. And so it is, I mean, there is a crisis going on in Los Angeles and all around the country. There can't be 40,000 kids. When people say that, they're like, oh, that can't that can't be possible. That is why from Friday at 3 to Friday at 5, we had a baby. And they said it could go that fast, and they meant it. It will go that fast. And so that is indicative of the crisis that's going on. And part of the reason why I talk about the crisis is because a lot of people that were in our class were not wealthy white people. There were a lot of like middle to lower income people, single people, LGBTQ people who were trying to just help.
Yeah.
And so I think that part of my advocacy for the foster care system is to encourage people that are in a privileged space to consider it. And what I know is that it's actually not for everybody. We almost didn't make it up here. Right. Like it is a journey. It took us 4 years to officially adopt Galileo. Wow. 4 years. That is too long.
Of constant fighting in court. And I know from other experiences, you had to pay for representation yourself. You had to pay for the baby's representation. And then you also had to pay for the birth parents' representation. Yeah.
So the birth family, the system is built so that the birth mom has her own lawyer. Yep. The birth family has a lawyer. Galileo had a lawyer. And then we have the county court officers. And so we ended up having to hire a lawyer because it got too scary. Yeah. Galileo was like 2. The pandemic hit, and then it got scary for us. Then Galileo's lawyer was fighting to get him out of our house and into the birth family's house. Wow. Even though he was 2. He had never been.
And been with you for a full 2 years.
Yes. And so once you have a 2-year-old, you will understand how insane that is. Yeah. You don't know what a 2-year-old, if you don't have a baby, you don't know what a 2-year-old is. A 2-year-old is a fully formed human. So the thought of him exiting our house and going somewhere where he had never been was a horror film. Yeah. And so we had to hire a lawyer. And we were lucky enough that we could afford to do it. I was on flight attendant. Thank God for season 1.
And that's what got you through it.
Yes. Our lawyer changed the game for us because she finally gave us a voice in court. And she was scary to the other lawyers. Yeah. She was like, nope, this is how it's got to work.
Well, let's talk about that because I think a lot of people assume, and I would, at the beginning of this process, I would have been one of them, because we discussed all sorts of, my husband and I, we discussed, do we want to do surrogacy? Do we want to do adoption? Do we want to go through the foster care system? And I think the way that I thought about it is surrogacy is most expensive, then it probably goes adoption, then it probably goes foster care.
Yes.
They're all, at the end of the day, very expensive.
Yeah.
And they just have different hurdles along the way. And your experience with the foster care system, unfortunately, is common, where you have to battle, you have to fight. But on top of that, you're a queer Black person.
Yes.
And even in a city like Los Angeles, you're still dealing with that.
It was happening during visitations. It was happening. We got to the point where I couldn't do the visitations with the birth family member. I couldn't do them because I couldn't keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And because the foster families we cannot make any mistakes. Like we can't say anything. We're, we are county workers essentially. And so we can't make mistakes. The birth family, they can. I mean, you should have seen some of those visits. It was chaos. And so I had to remove myself from this situation because I was like, I understand that I'm a county worker, but I'm still a Black person first.
Yeah.
And if he says that to me again, we're gonna have words. It was very tough for me.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. Yeah. And I hope things will change. I have hope in our humanity and faith in the world somehow. Some way.
I think it changes by talking about it.
I do too. Yeah. And acknowledging it. And I think that's like, for me, what gives me so much pride and excitement for this series is being able to elevate and bring people on and give people a platform that, have different experiences.
Yeah.
Because my experience right now as going through this is from a privileged position and a position that I'm very grateful to be in, but also like realize this shit's hard. And I have every resource available to me, and it's really, really tough. And I can't imagine people who don't have that system.
Do you know what's funny is we were privileged inside of the foster care system. We were very privileged. And it's a space where you realize that nobody cares about your privilege.
Yeah.
The foster care system, nobody cares about your privilege. I remember I went to, so when you're a foster parent, they give you food stamps to buy formula. And it had not occurred to, I don't know what a food stamp was. I was like, okay, I'll take it. And I went to the grocery store and got all this formula. And I walked up to the counter to pay. There was a line of people behind me. And I'm wearing something like this. And
Fashion.
I'm wearing
by the
fashion.
way.
And I pull out the food stamps. And the looks that I got from the cashier and everybody else. And I was like, oh, they think that I'm cheating the system. They obviously don't know I'm a foster parent. But I say that story because I hadn't realized my privilege. That's when it went off. I mean, I'm like, I'm a black person in America. I'm not privileged. And then I saw the underbelly of the system, the underbelly of the court system. Go into that courthouse, you will see things you have never seen before in your life. And I realized like, oh, my privilege doesn't work here. And also, there is a system, there is a reason why people get oppressed inside of the justice system. From the mothers to the babies, to the birth families, to the foster, it's a wreck back there. And I'm sure you and I didn't have any experience in any courtroom ever in my life. So anyways, it was like—
It's a scary place.
It was a scary place, and it was interesting to feel like I'm a black person and I don't have a ton of privilege. I walked in there and I was like, first of all, I can see where my privilege lives, and I can also see how it doesn't factor in this particular moment. I just became a part of the system.
I mean, and that has to feel incredibly frustrating, especially when you can't voice that because you have to sort of just bite your tongue and go with the flow and go with emotions and let people openly take shots at you. Yeah.
And also, it was incredibly humbling and created a lot of compassion for me. I think when you are currently dreaming up your child, right? You're laying in bed talking about all the dreams of this baby that you do not know. We were doing all the same things, and then our dreams included, and then there's going to be a birth mom, maybe a birth dad, but for us it was a birth mom, and we had created some monster, right? A monster in our brains. And I will never forget the first day we met her. She walked into the visitation and I went, oh my God, she's a child. Get in my arms. And we were hugging. Like, it was not the monster you thought. She was in the system too. And that was the like shock of it. She was a part of like the chaos. She was an innocent bystander in the chaos of the system. We immediately went to hug her. I was like, oh my God, she was a child.
You know, do you think that the goal should be reunification? Because it's a blanket statement.
Yes,
they always say
broad.
With the foster care system, they're like, the goal is always reunification. No. I personally, I don't believe that is the best approach.
I think the goal should be what is in the best interest of the baby. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes, so foster care is happening because there's an emergency. It's not happening because someone decided to give up their baby. It's happening because there's an emergency going on in that birth family. And so I think with a lot of the current crisis going on in the country and certainly in LA, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep trying to reunify a child when reunification is not going to be possible. Right. There's a crisis. There's an opioid crisis. There is a homeless crisis. It is not possible for some of these birth family members to pull their lives together in the amount of time that you would need to do that to then be able to take care of your baby. I say that also with a lot of humility. We were privileged, we were educated, and we didn't know what the fuck we were doing.
Right. You got handed
so I was like, I don't know how to be. I don't know.
You got handed a 5-year-old baby after
a 5-day-old baby.
5 days.
Yes. And I didn't know what to do.
Hours after signing a contract.
Yes. And I didn't know what to do. I had all of the resources, and then we didn't know what to do. So a lot of the birth families, they can't do it. And then there's a certain age in which the baby is like, once the baby is a year, and it happens even before a year, you will soon learn this, the baby is bonded.
Yeah.
And so to remove the baby becomes like, are we about to do that wound?
Yeah.
The cycle will just continue. And so, of course, I'm a foster parent, so I feel a certain way about it. Maybe if you had a birth parent on here,
Yeah.
they might say something else.
Right.
But I can only talk from my experience and go like, what I saw, the court cases that I saw, the courtrooms that I was in that waiting room, I saw it all. I said,
So how did you approach round 2 then for Apollo?
Round-
What changes did you make? Did you go? You obviously went in with your eyes wide open now, and you knew the challenges you faced the first time around.
Yes.
What did you do? What game plan did you put together?
Well, the world stopped. So Apollo was a pandemic baby.
Yep.
If the pandemic had not happened, there would not be an Apollo in our lives. Parenting one is plenty. But when the world stopped, the foster care system also stopped, but it continued. So people were having babies through the pandemic, but they couldn't get new parents and no placements. So we said, listen, if there's a baby and we wanted a girl, we were hell-bent on a black girl. And then the pandemic hit, and we told them, give us a black girl, you can get one. And they said, we'll look for one. And then our social worker called us with a Cambodian boy. And we were like, I don't know.
Don't play God.
I know.
Don't play God.
And what was crazy, Apollo has a crazy story, but she said, I'm calling you about this one because I don't think there will be any chance that he goes back to birth mom. Apollo was the 3rd child of his birth mom. So she had already been through the system. And so our social worker was like...
Her other 2 went through the foster care system too.
So her other 2 were in the system as well. So it was going to be a more cut and dry case.
Yeah.
And so
Was
she was
it?
like, yes.
Oh, okay.
Strangely enough, it was like somebody dropped a baby off at our doorstep.
And
it was bananas.
Smooth sailing through.
Like somebody dropped a baby off at the doorstep. And so the crazy thing is, because of Galileo's situation, we met all of his birth family and all of the cousins, and we knew everybody.
Yeah.
And then with the Apollo situation, it was the pandemic and we knew no one.
Wow.
And it was like somebody dropped the baby off. And because we were in our houses, my parents didn't meet Apollo until he was 10 months old.
Wow.
You know, our friends couldn't meet it. Like, no, it was a wild, wild moment. But yes, don't play God. I have a Cambodian son.
And beautiful family.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
How did Galileo take it when you brought Apollo in?
Okay. So can I be a little...
Go for it.
So during the pandemic, of course, there was like a lot of spiritual things. And I think parenting is a spiritual practice.
Yep.
If you don't have one, get one. If you don't have one, get one. And I had gone to, I called a psychic, like a healer. It was a healer. And we were talking about the pandemic. And I said, do you think that we should have another baby? And she said, oh, the baby's coming. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, we've been talking about a girl. And she said, it's not going to be a girl. And I was like, okay. And I said, what about, is there more that we should know? Is the baby on the earth? Because sometimes you get foster kids and they're already 8 months old. So I said, is the baby here? And she said, the baby is not here, but the baby is coming. And the baby is coming because Galileo already called him in. That is what she said to me. And then when Apollo showed up, Galileo was like, give me my brother. Their connection is wild. They are not biological siblings, but she said Galileo called him in. And she was right. I wanted a girl. I wanted a black girl so I could do this with her hair. That's what I wanted.
That's incredible.
I didn't get that.
No.
Well, I got Galileo. Now Galileo has cornrows, but
you can do that.
Apollo has beautiful.
Do that to your son.
Yes, I could do that to him. But yeah, it was like, so when he showed up, I knew. I was like, that's him.
So beautiful.
That was kind of beautiful.
And how old are they now?
Galileo is 5. He's in kindergarten. Apollo is 3, going on 30, and he is in pre-K. And he is a Leo, and he is...
Oh, yeah.
A Leo is all you need to know.
Wait, when's his birthday?
July 27th.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice.
So if you can control if you're having a Leo...
Yeah, well, we can try, but once again, we
Turns
can't.
out you can't.
You can't.
No. Yeah.
I might have to call your psychic just to...
I will give you her name and number.
Perfect.
She was right on.
Wow.
Spot on. Yeah.
So let's talk about being an artist and a creative.
Yeah.
And how your work
Yeah.
and your art changed after becoming a father.
Well, the first thing I can say is...
Because you were on Flight Attendant and you've been acting and you've obviously producing and performing.
Yeah.
you've built this craft, and then all of a sudden now you're becoming a dad and you're parenting. How did that change the game for you?
Well, the first thing I say is our country needs to solve its healthcare crisis, because no one talks about the fathers needing paternal leave, needing support, having paternal instincts. Like, we just don't know anything about babies. Most men don't know anything about babies. And I was so lucky because Galileo was, when he was born, like I was actually on another show called Dear White People. So I had him and we had no money. Like, it was crazy. Everyone's always trying to wait till they get rich to have a baby. We had him with no money. I was recurring on a Netflix series. When Apollo was born, we were in the middle of shooting Flight Attendant season one. It was season one. And we got stopped in the middle. When we got the call for Apollo, we said yes. We took him. The next day, I got a call from Flight Attendant saying, you got to be in New York City next week. And remember, there was that whole 2-week quarantine. And like, so we had a new baby and I had to be in New York City.
Because we were living in Los Angeles.
We were living in LA, so it was the middle of the pandemic still, and so we were trying to figure out if we could drive a truck across the city or across the country to get there. Yeah. We went through a bunch of hoops. We couldn't do it. My producer's a flight attendant. Were so gracious and so happy for me, and Kaylee Cuoco was one of those people. They wrote me out of an episode.
Wow.
So that I could have paternity leave.
Incredible. And
so that I could be with the baby. And you know that our producers were moms. Thank God for women at the top. I swear, women at the top, things are different. But
I don't think people understand how big of a deal it is for that level of production, for a series like that on HBO Max, for them to be able to be crafty enough and also talented enough to write you out of an episode.
They wrote me out of the episode. I was so grateful that they did it. They still paid me for the episode, but they wrote me out. And they were like, in fact, when I spoke to them, they were like, Griffin, you are not coming to New York City. You have a baby. Deal with your baby. It gave me an extra month. Yeah. To like
just one episode gave you
because there was all these like quarantines because I was in another episode and then I was gonna have to do 2 weeks quarantine for 2 weeks, go on to set. Then I was not in the following episode, and then I was in the next episode. So I was gonna have missed many months of him, and they were like, no way. So
good for them.
It was.
I love hearing those stories because when you hear about behind the scenes stuff in Hollywood, it typically isn't good. Mm-hmm. So to hear a positive story like that, especially with our community and what we've gone through this last year with the strike and are continuing to go through, that's really meaningful.
I'm telling you this too because when you have a baby and you're two men and you haven't made the baby, they hand you a baby. Yep. It is chaos. It's emotional, physical, mental chaos. And so like you don't know that until the baby's in your house. And I think when Galileo showed up, 3 months. I didn't leave the house for 3 months. We were like, what is this thing? It's your new best friend, but also like, what is it? You're not sleeping. Your instincts are firing. Galileo could breathe funny from across the room. And I was like, boop.
You knew it.
You know. So anyways, I'm telling you that. So if you can block your schedule, block it. Because you need a solid several months if you can take it to just go like, oh my God, we have a baby.
When did you feel like you sort of got your grasp on what was happening?
I still don't have a grasp.
You're like, I'm still looking for my footing.
I would like to get the grasp whenever it's ready to show up. But I don't think that I was actually really in flow until about 6 months.
Got it.
6 months.
So how about just from like a zooming out of a creative? I mean, obviously the flight attendant story is incredible and awesome, but just like your approach now to business and how and what you want to be a part of. How has children and these two boys changed
you? It is everything that anything that I do, the consideration is about the kids. Anything that I do, it's about the kids. Yeah. Because I don't want to be away from them for an extended amount of time. They need two dads as much as they can handle and as much as possible. So it dictates just about everything. I am in New York City right now because Other Dad has a show going to Broadway, and we talked about could we fly back and forth? Could the kids? It was not possible. All four of us had to get up and go.
You're doing what's in the best interest of your kids.
The kids are in the circus, is what we tell them. We're like, you're in the circus. Also, a lot of our friends are in the business and their kids are in the circus, and it's the best way to do it. Your kid is going to be in the circus whether you like it or not, so don't fight it.
Yeah.
Just announce we're in the circus.
Become the ringleader.
That's it. Announce it and be like, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
I love that. What a beautiful approach to it too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time
Stop.
with
Are
me.
you not going to talk about your things? Are you going to try to end this episode and not tell me anything? I
here's what we're
didn't
doing.
Google you. We have to talk about, now it's my show.
All right, take over.
So you're doing surrogacy.
Yeah.
What was that decision and where are you at? Can you say where you're at in the process of
I'll tell you
surrogacy?
exactly
Because
where
I'm
we're at.
curious.
So we have been going through this for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
So when I first tested my sperm, I didn't have any sperm. There was no swimmers. There was 4, and
That
3
is
of them were dead, and
incredible.
one of them looked weird. Is
Stop
what
it.
My doctor told me.
Wow.
Due
Was
to-
that a shock to you?
Oh, it was devastating.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
really emotional, and I had this concept in my head, because that's how we work, right?
Yeah.
It takes a while to get anything made in Hollywood. And I called my team and I was like, never mind, can't do it. It's too emotional. Like, won't be able to talk about this. And then it came full circle where I went through essentially 6 months of sperm rehabilitation.
Oh my God.
And got my numbers up. Jordan's numbers were always incredible, but he was so supportive and helpful. So we froze our sperm. We had to pick our egg donor, which once again, we said the phrase, we're not playing God, multiple times as we're like going through that process, which had its ups and downs and was challenging and unique. And then we made our embryos. We froze our embryos. We have 3 beautiful embryos. And then we had to go through a surrogacy match program and went through 3 different ones. And the woman who we have now, we are so lucky and so blessed and fortunate. And we are getting ready to do the transfer. So that's where we're at now.
How did you guys decide about the sperm, the eggs, who was going where and when and how? Like, what is that conversation?
We split. So we knew that we both want, it's hard because we go back and forth of like, we don't want to refer to them as biological. They're both our kids.
Yeah,
like we don't want to say that one's yours, that one's mine. Like that's not how we are building our family. But we have to acknowledge the fact that like we want one of each. So like we want 2 kids and we want one to be his DNA and one to be my DNA. They are our children together. But obviously we needed to tell the doctor that. So he split, our egg donor gave us 22 eggs on the first round. We split them 11 and 11. And then from that, Jordan made 2 embryos and I made 1. Just statistically and sperms and health. Yeah, that's how it worked. So we have 3 eggs frozen and we have instructed our doctor to put the healthiest one in. And then whatever that looks like, the next round we'll do it's going to either be his or mine.
And you will know which one, know which one's going in first. Yes.
No, I think we're going to.
Or you don't know.
No, we don't know, but I think we're going to be able to tell. I don't know. Maybe we won't. And I think that's going to be beautiful about it too.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so then why not put them both in at the same time and say, let's go?
Get twins?
Yeah.
Why
do it again?
We discussed
so
that.
much money and so much, it's an emotional
People
lift.
don't understand. So you actually do have to pay a surrogate more money to carry twins.
I'm going to scream.
Because there's more risk.
If I could be a surrogate, I'd do it right now.
I mean,
I would just pay me.
They're incredible
I'll
women.
carry.
Incredible women. We decided that we wanted quality time with each individually.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Is that, I mean, you're like, you are crazy for even giving that answer. We want to
No, it's a great answer.
We want to bond with them each individually.
It's a great answer.
Because I wanted twins at the beginning of this whole process. I was like, let's rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it and get and be done. Yeah. And he was like, but I want to bond. And as he was talking, I was like, oh, that makes sense. To have that bonding connection, that one-on-one time to really lean into parenting.
Do you feel like people have judgments around surrogacy when you talk about it? Do you feel it? Do you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I don't say but, I say I know that. I don't know. That's always my approach on it is like, I never want to make an excuse. I'd never want to run from the fact that like I have resources, privilege. There's a lot that went into this, but also like I'm deserving of a family too in the way that I want to build my family. And I can acknowledge that anybody out there who's growing their family needs to do it the way they want to do it. It's a personal thing. And it wasn't an easy decision to make. I think that's another thing to acknowledge is like, there are incredible kids in the foster care system. There's incredible kids that we could adopt. But we decided that we wanted to go this route. And I've always wanted to build a family this way.
You've always wanted
no,
to...
I shouldn't say that. But I mean,
like, tell me more. Yeah.
After coming out and after realizing that I could have family, like this was always sort of option one for me, that I knew. I wanted to educate myself in the other ways. But as soon as I came out, I was like, oh, it is possible. And here's how I want to do it.
Are families supportive of this?
Yeah. Because the other thing I like to tell people is this is one of the most intentional things you can do in your life. It is the
most correct, especially when you're a gay man. I mean, it is the most.
Creating a family as a gay couple is one of the most intentional things. For anybody to take a stance against you and say you're not deserving or fit to be a parent because you're gay is wild, because we have to jump through so many hoops, additional hoops from straight couples who are going through the same process. Like we have to go through that. It's still legal in 13 states to openly discriminate against same-sex couples for adoption. And I don't think people realize that. I found that out recently.
I knew about it.
So, and our daddyhood is partnering up with Family Equality, and we're sponsoring and helping them out, not only elevate their messaging, making donations to them, the work that they're doing for the families out there across the country is incredible.
I'm curious to see when you have this child, how your families react, because Galileo was my parents' first grandchild, and I will say he changed the temperature of my entire family.
Wow.
And healed things that couldn't get healed without him.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because there's so many unknowns for our parents' generation around us having kids, because we're the first generation that's really doing that. And I'll be curious to see what things get healed.
That's beautiful.
And come forward, because a lot of people have feelings.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a thought and everyone's got an opinion until that baby shows up. And then things start to go like, I don't care about that. Give me my baby. Yeah. You know, from aunts, uncles, grandparents, parents, siblings, it all, like the baby will shift your life, especially as a gay couple. It will shift your life.
Yeah, there's definitely been questions. I grew up in Illinois, so we didn't have a lot of representation and the town wasn't very diverse. So there was a lot of people who were wondering, like, we even got the question of like, who's going to be the mom and who's going to be the dad?
Absolutely. Yes. And what do you say?
I was like, what do you mean by that?
I used to say, I'll be the mom and he'll be the dad.
Well, what do you mean by that? And I mean, Jordan and I will still have to figure it out. We're both very emotional, which ended up, I'll just tell you, like, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but that was one of the decisions that we made to not go through the foster care and adopt. Like, we are both very emotional people, and it is very taxing on emotional people and empathetic people. And we would not do good with that process. In the anxiety that I would have that baby could be taken out of my home, I would be a mess. I mean, you said you went through it for 2 years. So ultimately 4. Wow.
4 years.
So ultimately foster care system is not for someone like me. My mental health would be a disaster for years.
Yes.
So that was why we decided to go the route we went, which, by the way, still anxiety, but just a different way. And it's a little more controlled and like science backed versus, and the unknown variables are less.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, but yeah, everybody has an opinion. I'm learning this.
Everybody has an opinion and none of it matters. Turns out.
Yeah.
Actually, none of it matters. It will be the 3 of you in a house, and that is when it gets scary and beautiful. It gets quiet. First, it's going to be chaos, and then it gets quiet, and that's when you go, oh my God, I'm a dad.
Beautiful.
Yeah. It's the 2 a.m. feeding when you're going, oh my God, I'm a dad. By the way, are you guys going to get help?
So that's actually been what people are opinionated on.
Oh, I have so many opinions, but I'm just curious to know like where you guys are at and what you're talking about.
We are. But a lot of people, you know, I've heard it all at this point where they've even openly said to me, are you sure it's the right time then if you're getting help? Like you shouldn't need help. And we both work. Like we're still going to find ways to bond with our child. We're not going to have somebody raise our child for us. Yeah. We need a little help. So yes, we are planning on getting help. but we're trying to find those boundaries and those lines too. Like, what is a good system? Do we need help just through the night, or do we need help, 24/7? Do we need help on the weekdays? What's our game plan? And we still don't have the full answer to that. We just know that we're interviewing people to try to help.
I'd like to interview for the position.
You're hired.
Thank you. And the only thing I will say, just dad to future dad, is there is something really powerful about to go as long as you can go without. There is something in it for you. It's not just like, because we want to go back to our careers and back to your life will never be the same. So there is something about the initiation process that I don't think you should skip. Like,
about waking up at 2 a.m.
Do not skip it. My mother said this to me. She said, there is something about getting up in the middle of the night with your baby and the world is asleep and it's just you and him or you and her. That is when you know who your baby is, and that's the baby knows who you are. And so I encourage people to, if you can stand it, I don't know what your schedule is, but if you can stand it and try to go as long as you can go without the help, because then when the help shows up, you're like, this is my baby and I know exactly what she needs.
Right.
And don't do that and do this, and like she needs this. The instincts that I'm talking about, the paternal instincts kick in a different way when you're like, no, I know this baby.
Yeah.
And so it's magical, especially for men. It's magical because they don't tell us. They tell women, you're going to have all these instincts. They don't tell men you're going to have instincts. Yeah. So anyways, if you can, both of you, not skip that magical moment, go as long as you can. Yeah.
I love that. Do you have any other questions for me, since this is Daddyhood with Griffin Matthews now?
Yeah, I just really, where did you get the cute sweatshirt? And
this is Nudes.
Oh,
Nuuds.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I love it. They have all great neutrals.
It's very cute.
Thanks.
Here's the thing. The reason why I see it is because I'm like, so when you're a dad, you're never not wearing sweat clothes. You're only in
I'm already
sweats.
a very casual person.
It gets worse.
See, like that leather jacket is stressing me out because I'm like, oh, how stiff and
I would be. Yeah, let me tell you something. I don't look like this in life. I am in sweats chasing children most of my life.
Well, I'll be wearing my nudes as a parent. Then.
Nudes, please send me some nudes.
I got you.
Send nudes. Is that what you're supposed to say?
Send nudes is their tagline.
I'm dead.
You're already an ambassador.
I am your nanny and the ambassador of nudes.
And LaCroix.
Yeah, and LaCroix. Thank you, LaCroix. You're perfect.
Oh my gosh. This has been so much fun.
You're perfect. I'm so excited for you.
I'm going to be texting you at 2 a.m. when I get up to feed my baby.
Here's what I'm telling you.
You made me do this.
You have to. I'm not kidding. You actually have to. There's like a network of gay dads. You actually have to have them.
Can we get in that network?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Starting with me. It starts here.
Perfect.
Best dad ever. It starts right here.
Let's start a WhatsApp group.
You kind of have to do it.
That's what I want. We're going to create a daddyhood.
I think it's important because also like we're not women.
Yeah.
We're not women.
We have different experiences.
My kids have 2 dads. Your kids are going to have 2 dads. And like, it's just a different experience even for them going to school and it's a different thing. It's a completely different thing. So yes, you have to have a network.
Well, I'm honored to have you in my network.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me.
You're so kind.
Oh, before you leave.
What?
Leave us with one piece of advice, positive thinking. It could be anything, a quote, inspiration.
Oh, you know what I'll leave you with? My mother texted, we have a family WhatsApp, and my mom texted us yesterday saying, do you realize that you are the first generation of African Americans to have all of your rights? Wow. And then she sent us the family tree. So my parents were born in the 50s. They did not have all of their rights. She was like, your generation is the first. So like, run free. And I had never considered that. We are the first. And me even being a gay Black man, like I've got my rights. And so I just thought it was a beautiful Black History Month family WhatsApp group chat.
Mama Matthews come through.
She slayed that group chat that day. Yeah, it was really kind of legendary to think about, and it gave me a lot of hope and power in the position that I'm in to go like, I've got all my rights. So let's go. Don't shrink.
Don't shrink.
Don't shrink.
I love that. Thank you for joining me.
Don't shrink.
Don't shrink. That's a wrap on Daddyhood.
The ride of your life is Daddyhood.